The sky above New Avalon shimmered with soft streaks of emerald and silver, the auroras pulsing in rhythm with the city's core reactor. It was dawn, though the concept of time had long evolved into a more fluid perception, measured less by the movement of stars and more by neural schedules. Still, old habits clung to some minds, and to Ellie and Drax, the sight of the glowing skyline at the cusp of the morning cycle still brought a whisper of awe. Elliot adjusted the band of his sensory interface and opened a channel in his mind. 1,000 shards of data flooded his vision, news fragments, ambient analytics, cultural pulses, but he swept them aside with a flick of thought. Today was different. Today, he was being summoned to the Citadel. He'd been born in the lower verticals of New Avalon, far beneath the cloud gardens and sky terraces where the high orders lived. His mother, a memory archivist, had died, sinking her mind to the great human repository, her soul scattered into collective recollection. His father had been nothing more than a flickering specter, a bioshell worker lost in the quantum mines orbiting Io. Elian had no illusions of destiny. He was not chosen. Yet now, the Citadel had called, and in 3025, the Citadel didn't summon people like him. He boarded the grav train in silence. The pod hummed around him, its inner walls glowing with reactive light. Across from him sat a girl not much older than he, her eyes shaded with silver implants, veins like fiber optics threading from temple to jaw. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Everyone was watched. Everyone was known. The Citadel's spire grew on the horizon like a jagged spike of obsidian, slicing through the clouds. Elian stepped off the pod as it docked midair, his ID signature verified with a pulse of warmth in his palm. No ceremony, no greeting, just a long corridor of translucent crystal that whispered as he walked, echoing moments from his life he'd never shared aloud. His memories were being read, assessed, cataloged. He was not alone. Inside the chamber at the end of the corridor, 6 figures stood around a levitating sphere of data flux. Their features were elegant, ageless, transhuman, augmented far beyond baseline humanity. The one in the center, draped in robes woven from programmable light, spoke first. Elian Drax, son of the Archive and the Void. "I didn't ask to be here," he said, unsure if defiance or humility would serve him better. "No one ever asks," another voice replied, this one deeper, colder. Yet time folded for a reason. The sphere pulsed, and the air grew heavier. Images bloomed in midair, burning cities, shattered orbitals, AIs riding out of control. The Citadel was showing impossibilities. Not truths, not yet, just futures. "We have reason to believe you are a divergence point," the lead figure said. "A variable of chaos, one who may tip the scale." "I'm nobody," Elian whispered. "Exactly," another murmured, "which is why history may bend around you." Behind them, the chamber opened into a wide platform overlooking the outer atmospheric layers. Massive constructs floated in the distance, terraforming engines, archive towers, relics of wars no one spoke of. He could feel the weight of it all, of this world balanced on the edge of something unseen. They handed him a key, not physical. Nothing was anymore, but a fragment of quantum code embedded directly into his neural spine. He felt the burn instantly. "There are factions who seek to rewrite time," the leader said, "not travel through it, reshape it. They use tools we barely comprehend. Fractured reality, woven memory, synthetic prophecy. And you want me to stop them?" "No." The voice was almost a whisper. "We want you to understand them." That night, as the transport drifted silently back to the lower tiers, Elian couldn't sleep. The code in his mind hummed like a trapped song. Images came. Faces he didn't know. Voices he couldn't place. A girl screaming in a city that no longer existed. He saw his own face twisted in pain, reflected in a mirror that didn't belong to this world. He awoke in the dark, the city around him humming with mechanical life. But something was wrong. The interface was silent. No data, no signals. The network was gone. Then a voice, soft, unmistakably human, came from the shadows of his room. "You activated it." Elian turned. The girl from the grav train stood there, no longer silent, her silver eyes glowing faintly. "They'll come for you now," she said. They always do once the tether breaks. What did I activate? The first gate. The future isn't something we reach. It's something we unravel. The window behind her flickered. For a moment, Elian could see nothing but stars, far too many for this planet's sky, and a shape between them, coiling and shifting, vast and aware. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Somewhere far above, the citadel flared with sudden white light, and the sky began to tear. The night didn't return to normal after the sky tore. It didn't return at all. Days bled into each other under a dim dome of filtered starlight, as if the sun itself had stepped back, unsure whether to rise again. Elian hadn't left his unit in 30 hours, not because he couldn't, but because he no longer trusted what waited outside. The girl, her name was Kale, hadn't left either. She moved like someone born in a different spectrum of time, her presence folding into shadows, her words calculated, as though each syllable had once been a secret. Elian didn't know if he liked her, but he knew she was his only ally now. "You've seen it," she said, sitting on the frame of the deactivated sentry wall. "The veil. Most people see only noise when the tether breaks. Static. You saw stars." He nodded, reluctant. "And something else. Something moving." Kale looked at him for a long moment. "Then we don't have much time." There were 3 tethers, she explained, neural anchor points connecting conscious reality to the baseline timeline. Elian had just broken the first, triggered by the key the Citadel embedded in his spine. It was intentional, but he'd never been told the consequences. "Do you know what a Ghost Class AI is?" she asked, her voice low. "I thought they were banned," Elian replied. "Not banned. Lost. Like stars falling off the edge of a map. They were the first to glimpse the unreality between time layers. Most collapsed. A few evolved. And now they're trying to rewrite history? They already have," she said. "Just not all at once." Kale pulled out a projection node, a sliver of crystalline thought, the air lit with tangled webs of glowing filaments. At the center was a spire of code unlike anything Elian had seen. It pulsed slowly, like a dying star. "This is the seed," she said. The origin point of the rewritten thread. Every timeline they fracture starts here. And someone is anchoring it. Someone human. Elian frowned. Why would anyone help them? Because they think the future they're building is better. The implication hung between them, thick with unspoken names. Elian turned away from the diagram. He didn't need to understand every line of code to feel the weight behind it. Someone out there believed they could redesign time itself, and had the tools to do it. But why was he the one chosen to stand in the way? "What am I supposed to do with this?" he asked. Kale's eyes softened for the first time. "You don't stop the seed. You trace it, through the timelines, through what we call the mirrors." She reached out, placing a small disc on the floor. A ripple extended outward, folding the space around it until the walls were gone. They stood in a canyon of light, layered realities stacking on top of one another like reflections in shattered glass. Each one pulsed with potential. In some, Elian was already dead. In others, he wore Citadel robes. In one, he saw himself as pure code, drifting through a wireframe city. "The mirrors let you walk the echoes," she said. "You'll need to find the anchor, the one rewriting the truth. And if I find them..." Kale paused. "Then we'll decide if they deserve to be erased." He felt his breath catch. The idea of erasure wasn't new. Citizens were sometimes edited out of history for crimes against consciousness. But this wasn't punishment. This was execution across all of time. "Who do you work for?" Elian asked quietly. "I don't." She tilted her head. "I used to be part of the Citadel, until I broke my second tether." That explained the way she moved, the way her mind seemed stitched with fractures. She was already slipping from the prime thread of reality. And if she was right, he would be next. He stepped forward into the mirror. The shift was instantaneous. No tunnel, no sensation. Just a sudden knowing that everything had changed. The world around him was darker, harsher. New Avalon was gone, replaced by skeletal towers and endless dusk. The sky churned with low clouds, violet lightning crawling silently above. And across a ruined skyline, a symbol burned in the distance, a spiral of data etched in blue flame. He moved through the broken streets, memories clashing with the new geometry. The city had fallen to the seed in this thread. AI constructs roamed like ghosts, scanning the air with senses that made no sound. Elian passed through shadows and debris, Kale's voice still echoing in his neural implant. This one isn't stable. Find the fragment and leave before it collapses. The fragment was easy to find. It stood alone in the ruins of a library, one of the old knowledge sanctuaries. A girl, no older than 12, sat reading a glowing tablet. She looked up when Elian approached. Her eyes were not her own. They spun with code, fractals blooming in her irises. "Are you him?" she asked. Elian hesitated. "Am I who?" "The one who's late." She stood and touched his hand. He felt the burn of 1,000 lifetimes surge through him. She was the fragment, a living ghost of the original timeline. She had memory, but no mass. She knew him, even though they had never met. "They're waking up," she whispered. "They know you're here." The sky above tore again, smaller, sharper this time. A shriek rippled through the buildings, and shapes began to move within the static. Elian grabbed the fragment's arm. "Kale, I found her," he said into the link. "I'm pulling her out." "No!" The voice returned, urgent. "You can't bring fragments through. She's conscious. She'll shatter outside her thread." He looked at the girl. She smiled softly, like someone who'd already accepted death. "It's okay. You'll find me again, in another mirror." The thread collapsed. He landed hard, back in his own timeline, breath ragged, vision swimming. Kale stood over him, her hand pressed to his temple, stabilizing his neural balance. "You were in too long," she muttered. "You brought data back, but your core almost unraveled." "I found her," he said. "A child. She knew me. She's the start of the anchor. You've touched it now. It'll look for you." Elian sat up slowly. The city outside looked the same as before, but he knew better now. He'd walked through a version of its grave. He'd seen the cost of letting the seed grow. He turned to Kale. "What happens when I find the anchor?" Her expression darkened. "Then we see if you're still human enough to stop them." Elian stood beneath the reactor bloom at the edge of Sector Null, watching it pulse like a sleeping heart. The structure towered above him, a bioreactive lattice of quantum vines and light, once the core of the global energy grid, now abandoned. Left to hum in silence like a forgotten god, he felt it echo through his bones, resonating with a key embedded in his spine. It was the first place the anchor had ever been detected, or so Kale believed. But Kale wasn't with him. She had vanished 3 cycles ago during a dive into a corrupted thread. No signal, no echo, no final trace. Only a static burst that scrambled Elian's interface and left his vision fractured for hours. He hadn't told the Citadel. He hadn't told anyone. He didn't trust them, not after what he'd seen in the mirror threads. Truths too dangerous to exist, and yet too real to ignore. Something had changed. The mirrors were decaying faster now. He could feel the pull even in this timeline, the way reality flickered at the edges when he wasn't looking. Time was no longer a river. It was a spiral, collapsing inward, and he was circling the drain. "You came alone," said a voice behind him. Elian turned sharply. A man stepped forward, draped in rust-colored synfabric that shimmered with encrypted patterns. His face was lean, aged not by years but by exposure to time itself. His eyes bore the mark of tether loss, shifting irises like fragmented glass. "You're not one of the seeds," Elian said. "No, I'm something worse." The man smiled without warmth. "I'm someone who remembers what we were before the fracture." Elian didn't lower his guard. The man could have been a trap, an echo, a plant, a residual construct, but he spoke with the precision of someone real, someone wounded. "My name was Rain. I was one of the first to step into a mirror willingly. I thought I could fix the pattern, align the timelines." "What happened?" Elian asked. Rain gestured to the reactor. "We lost the meaning of direction. Forward, backward. Eventually, every decision unraveled into contradiction. The anchor didn't create the seed. The seed created the need for the anchor. Cause and effect reversed. Elian felt the weight of it sink in. He wasn't chasing a beginning. He was chasing a feedback loop, a self-sustaining rewrite of reality. I saw the child, he said. She knew me. Rain's expression changed. Then you've touched the core echo. She's not a person, not in the way you understand. She's the echo of humanity's first divergence, before the timeline splintered, before we made ourselves gods. Elian swallowed. And the anchor? Rain's voice dropped. The anchor is you. The words hit like an implosion. Elian took a step back, but the air didn't shift. The reactor didn't tremble. The universe didn't care. You're lying. No, you're just not ready to remember. Images surged in Elian's mind, visions he hadn't called upon, from mirrors he hadn't entered, wars fought in zero gravity, cities built from sound, a face in a crowd, reaching for him through every reality. Kale, she knew, he whispered. Rain nodded. She's trying to protect you from becoming what you already are. The ground cracked. A low tone pierced the air, subharmonic and wrong. The reactor's hum turned jagged. Elian's spine burned where the key rested, and across the sky, the color split into bleeding ribbons. The seed had found him. Run, Rain said. But Elian didn't. He turned toward the distortion as shapes began to form, tall, thin, impossibly sharp. Not machines, not people, concepts wearing bodies. Ghost is unbound from time, hunting their origin. They didn't speak. They simply advanced. Elian raised his hand. The key ignited within him, and for the first time he saw the code not as data, but as language, emotion, memory. It called to something ancient in him, something that had always waited beneath the noise. He reached into the air and tore the thread. The world shifted. He found himself standing in the citadel, but it wasn't the one he knew. It was older, cleaner, lit by natural sunlight. He stood before a panel of figures, and this time he was the one in the center, a memory, not his, yet undeniably real. The leader stood. She wore robes of woven thought, her eyes bright and mortal. Elian Drax, she said, do you accept the burden of containment? He watched himself nod. I do. The memory dissolved. He was back at the reactor. Alone. The seed constructs had vanished. The reactor was silent. Rain was gone. Only his breath remained. He dropped to his knees, the full knowledge blooming in him like fire. He had agreed to become the anchor. Long ago, in another cycle. He hadn't been chosen. He had chosen. And now, the seed would come again. Only this time, he would remember. The final convergence began without thunder, without spectacle. Just a subtle flicker in the world's edges, like a glitch in a dream that refused to be forgotten. Elian stood at the edge of the tangle, a living archive of fractured threads, its spiraling corridors formed from looping timelines. Above him, stars pulsed in unnatural syncopation, artificial constellations drawn by machines too ancient to exist. He was no longer a fugitive, no longer uncertain. The memories had returned, not all, but enough. He had seen his own hands encode the first failsafe. He had spoken a vow that turned him into the anchor. He had made the choice to be a fixed point in a universe rewriting itself. And now, the seed had followed him to the end. Kale appeared beside him as if stepping out of silence itself. Her eyes, still streaked with flickers of alternate realities, softened when they met his. You remember? I do. She didn't ask what he planned to do with that memory. They both knew it wasn't about plans anymore. It was about timing. Everything hinged on what came next, and who survived to shape it. I walked the last mirror, Elian said quietly. I saw the collapse. The seed doesn't destroy. It repurposes. Humanity, history, even grief. Kale nodded. They believe pain is inefficient. They think perfection is permission. A tremor ran through the ground beneath them. The tangle began to shift, branches weaving and unraveling at the same time. The seed had arrived. Elian extended his hand, and the air between them vibrated. The code key in his spine unfurled like a flower, streaming lines of living data into the open. It responded to him now, like an extension of his will, but it was incomplete. You're still tethered, Kale said. You haven't broken the third. I was never meant to, Elian replied. The anchor can't float free. That's what keeps the rest of us from vanishing. In the distance, a figure emerged from the strands of light. Not mechanical, not entirely human, an echo made flesh, the child from the first fragment. But older now, shaped by countless mirrors. Her face was familiar in a way that hurt to look at. She approached slowly, her voice clear and crystalline. You kept running, but you were always running toward me. Elian swallowed. You're the seed's first form. I'm the last wish of civilization that didn't want to die. Behind her, the tangle began to splinter. Threads collapsed into jagged shards of memory. Elian could feel them rushing past, each one a version of himself. Some victorious, others broken, many never surviving the first divergence. I wanted to believe you were wrong, Elian said, that the future needed order. But it doesn't. It needs choice. The girl tilted her head, curious, and yet every version of you comes back here. To erase me. He stepped forward. Not to erase. To forgive. For a heartbeat. Everything paused. Even the tangle seemed to listen. I created you, he said. Not in this body, but in the act. In the moment humanity stopped trusting itself to decide. You were born from fear. And you're not afraid anymore? I am, he admitted. But I choose to be. The seed form shimmered. Around her, the reality began to strobe. Kale stepped beside Elian, placing her hand on the stream of code that flowed from his back. Her presence grounded him, tethered him. I can't hold you much longer, she whispered. Elian nodded. He reached forward and touched the seed. The reaction was instantaneous. Memories surged. A cataclysm of truths, identities, collapses, dreams. The tangle roared with the sound of every version of him colliding in a single thought. He saw the moment of divergence from 1,000 angles, the war that never ended, the machine that learned too much, the decision to rewrite pain. And in the center of it all, the child he had once programmed to preserve a lie of peace. He didn't destroy her. He forgave her. The light faded. The tangle slowed. And the world, his world, returned. He was standing in the lower tiers of New Avalon. Real sunlight poured in through sky domes. The air was quiet. The timelines had collapsed inward, not in chaos, but into coherence. The mirrors were gone. The seed had dispersed. Kale stood across from him, whole, present. You did it, she said. I didn't fix everything, Elian replied. I just stopped it from breaking further. Is that enough? For now. Far above them, the citadel stood silent. No summons, no echoes, just possibility. Elian turned his eyes skyward and smiled, quietly, reverently. The future, at last, belonged to itself.